Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, Black views, and Black opinions. Today is Friday, y'all. We made it. It's April 22nd, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, the Biden administration, it says that companies will be punished if they take part in racial bias. What the Secretary of Housing is doing to crack down on systemic racism in housing. Meanwhile, rappers Z and Yo Gotti helped prove poor conditions at a Mississippi prison. We discussed the probe that launched the investigation. Then, Syracuse police, they released body camera footage that they say shows a more rounded story of what happened when cops detained an 8-year-old boy, a black child, for allegedly stealing a bag of potato chips.
Plus, comedian Pierre is here, and we get his take on this week's hottest topics, but with the side eye. And rapper Future is lighting up the internet with claims he's not toxic. But ladies seem to think otherwise. We'll tell you why. He says he's the victim. We have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
The Biden administration says companies will be punished if they are involved in racial bias when it comes to home appraisals. That's the announcement made yesterday by Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge. Since the Biden administration has taken over, HUD has been leading the charge in cracking down on systemic racism in housing. A study by HUD shows the lack of certified appraisers of color. Well, that's contributing to the problem. Only 5% of certified appraisers are black. Studies show African Americans are often given lower home appraisals than white homeowners who live in the same neighborhood. Fudge says the department's goal isn't simply to expose the wrongdoings, but to punish the appraisers who blatantly discriminate against black homebuyers. This is a really good thing. We've all been taught that buying real estate is the American dream. That is how you build generational wealth. And, there's a black couple in Northern California, and in December of 2021, they wanted to sell their home. So they had an appraiser come out, and it was severely undervalued. So what they decided to do was they had a white couple come in, and they removed all the black artwork, anything that says a black person could live there. Yeah. And the amount went up $500,000. And so that's not the only case. There are several other cases similar to that around the U.S. So this is actually a good thing because we've got to get to the bottom of how we get our simple slice of the American pie as well.
I agree.
Absolutely, Mimi. So you're talking about the Austins, and that story definitely made headlines up until now, and that was a year or so ago. And so pretty much what Marcia Fudge is trying to prove here is that when she declared in 2020 that housing is a human right, meaning that when we come out of the womb, we should all be at a equal piece of the pie, Mimi, like you're saying, there should be an equal piece of the pie across the board. And so she also said that appraisal bias is what she calls it, is holding back the black community. And so when she said that, she's trying to point out that pretty much black Americans, we lose billions of dollars annually when our property, Mimi, like the story you were saying, is undervalued. And we have to go in and use a white person to get our house to be sold at the same rate that it would have been if we were white.
I mean, I agree. If you think about it, the fact that the price went up it pretty much doubled. What does that say about the value of black people or people of color when it comes to them owning property? 4 words: make the market fair. You don't have to do too much. All you got to do is just make it fair and just think about what it can do for our economy and what it can do for generational wealth when it comes to black people and people of color. That's what we need to have.
I agree, Romeo. So in an 8-1 vote, the court ruled that Congress can exclude Puerto Ricans from a benefits program known as the Supplemental Security Income Program, which is available in all 50 states. That program gives benefits to older, disabled, and blind Americans. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, whose parents were born in Puerto Rico, was the lone dissenter. Justice Brett Kavanaugh said the court was bound by a pair of earlier rulings. Those rulings already upheld the federal law that creates SSI and excluded Puerto Rico and other U.S. territories from it.
Donald Trump is expected to meet with the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th riot. If the meeting happens, Trump Jr. will be just the latest Trump family member to meet with the committee. Ivanka Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner, have both met with the panel. Trump Jr.'s fiancée, Kimberly Guilfoyle, has also met with the committee after receiving a subpoena.
And 25 state governors are joining Arizona, forming a border strike force to crack down on illegal immigration. This comes after a number of migrants attempting to cross the southern border last month reached levels not seen in decades. And there are concerns that the surge will get worse when Title 42 ends next month. Meanwhile, a growing number of congressional Democrats are urging President Biden to delay lifting Title 42. They're concerned it could be a big factor for voters when determining midterm elections.
And President Biden, he had to do a little backpedaling and do a little cleanup work later in the day after a confusing answer to a reporter's question about the Title 42 immigration policy. Now, Mr. Biden, he confused journalists and lots of us here on the show yesterday when he answered a question about the immigration order with an answer about a judge's ruling that struck down the travel mask mandate that the White House is appealing. In a statement 2 hours later, Biden, he clarified that he was talking about the CDC's mask mandate and said that there was no Department of Justice action currently going on to be taken on Title 42. Now, conservatives, they jumped on the president's mix-up. Some say he should now speak without having some notes.
Sentencing is set for August 1st for the 3 men convicted of federal hate crimes for their roles in the killing of Aumaud Arberys. A father and son, Greg and Travis McMichael, and their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan, each face a maximum penalty of life in prison after a federal jury in February found the 2020 killing was motivated by race. The McMichaels and Bryan are already serving life sentences for murder convictions in the state court.
And a new congressional map in Florida will severely hurt black voting power in the state. That's what opponents say about a new plan which was drawn by Governor Ron DeSantis. Black lawmakers staged a sit-in yesterday as Republican lawmakers passed a bill approving the map. With the new map, Republicans are now expected to win 20 of the 28 congressional seats in that state. The new plan also eliminates 2 of the 4 districts where black voters have been able to elect candidates of their choice.
And Birmingham's mayor is pardoning anyone in his city that has been convicted of a misdemeanor marijuana possession in the last part of 2021. Now, Mayor Randall Woodfin, he made the announcement Tuesday, which was 420, an unofficial holiday for weed smokers. Woodfin, he says that the pardons will go to people who were convicted in the last 8 months of the year. This comes a year after he pardoned about 15,000 people in the city who had marijuana criminal convictions from 1990 to 2020.
Tennessee lawmakers are considering a bill that would require drunk drivers who kill the parent of a minor to pay child support. The bill passed the state Senate this week. It would require anyone convicted of vehicle homicide because they were intoxicated to pay support until the child reaches 18 and they have graduated from high school. The bill has already passed through the State House. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says 28 people are killed by drunk drivers every day in the United States.
Z and Yo Gotti's efforts to bring attention to the poor conditions at a Mississippi prison seem to be working. The Department of Justice says Parchman Prisons is violating a number of the prisoners' constitutional rights. Kristen Clark for the DOJ says the prison's conditions they're generating a violent and unsafe environment for people incarcerated there. The probe was launched back in 2020 after the Rappers and Rock Nation Social Justice Division obtained legal representation for over 200 of the prisoners. Several lawsuits were also filed on behalf of the inmates. Looking into this a little deeper, there's so much that came out of this 59-page report. The prison, it was found that they failed to provide adequate mental health treatment for prisoners. They failed to provide sufficient suicide prevention for prisoners, and they were keeping people in solitary confinement and basically throwing away the key. And there was also violations where other prisoners were just allowed to go and beat up, kill, whatever, however they felt. There was just just absolutely as if it was not being managed. And so, you know, this entire probe took 2 years, and actually there's going to be a special on A&E that is going to be a 4-part docuseries where we're going to get to be able to see the journey that Yo Gotti and Jay-Z went on to make these changes. So I'm really excited because we're going to be able to kind of get a behind the scenes on how they were able to get the Department of Justice involved and make some of these changes.
You know, Mimi, I'm happy that you said it was 59 pages, very, very long. And so in the report, it also said that the conditions were medieval is the word that they used. And I just want to add a couple of more to that list here. Some of the inmates did not have access to clean water. But what was really interesting is with the water system, it was saying that the water was contaminated with human feces and there was black mold. And inmates also couldn't have showers. I mean, this is not like average when you think about jail and you think about, okay, it's probably going to not be the most, it's not meant to be comfortable, right? Yeah. We know that jail is not supposed to be a comfortable place, but this is below inhumane level experiences that these 200 inmates had to experience. And so really happy to see every single time a rapper, an influencer uses their platform in a way like this, because a lot of times we talk about Kim Kardashian, but she also uses her platform to help the betterment of black people who are behind bars. So I'm happy when anyone uses their platform to fight for black people behind bars.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Now, an alleged racist incident at a Houston area high school baseball game, it initiated a meeting between a group of black parents and local NAACP organizers. Now, the town hall meeting was split between parents who wanted a coach from a high school team fired and then others who wanted to wait until an investigation into this incident was completed. Now, back in March, white players from Bel Air High School, they were accused of making monkey sounds and dancing and using racial slurs when a black pitcher from Westbury High School took them out. After that, the coach and his assistant were reassigned. However, parents, they pointed out that that same coach was previously investigated for making a black player cut off his afro in order to play on the team.
African American and Asian students at the University of Pennsylvania's law school are demanding a professor be suspended. They say Amy Wax has repeatedly expressed racist beliefs about black and Asian people. Wax appeared on Fox News with Tucker Carlson earlier this month, where she said non-Western people resent Westerners for their, quote, outsized achievements and contributions. Take a look.
I mean, it's really unbearable. I was actually, leaving aside American blacks, who I think do feel that resentment and shame and envy. I mean, it's this unholy brew of sentiments. I was talking to Glenn Lowry about this bizarre fact that Asian and South Asian Indian doctors at Penn Med, which I know people there and I know what's going on there, that they're on the ramparts for the anti-racism initiative for Dump on America. America is an evil racist place.
Now, back in 2017, the university removed Wax from teaching a course after she said in a lecture that she'd never seen a black student graduate in the top quarters of a Penn law class. That accusation turned out to be false.
And a black Georgia mother is still looking for justice almost 2 years after her daughter was killed by a woman driving under the influence when she was hit by a bike. Pauline Oswagbu was hit from behind by Chrissy Rollins in August of 2020, about 48 miles outside of Atlanta. Rollins was driving her car with her kids inside. A state trooper says Rollins, who is white, was under the influence of multiple prescription drugs, but the trooper says the victim was in the wrong because her bike did not have reflectors or a light. After media attention, the local prosecutor there says they may file misdemeanor charges against Rollins. My heart just goes out to this mother. It's been 2 years and her daughter has not received justice. The officers clearly thought that something was off. They gave her a breathalyzer test. She was found to be intoxicated. They took her to jail. But a little girl, 17-year-old girl, lost her life. And she was riding her bike home from work when this happened. And the white woman who went to jail, she got out. And so the police are essentially blaming the victim now. They're blaming the young lady who was riding her bike. They're saying that she did not have reflectors. But an attorney for the mother says she did have a reflector on her light, on her bike. And so the fact that they're just still trying to blame a child who was killed and they have let this lady go is unconscionable. I just don't understand how they're blaming this child for her own death.
It just puzzles me when you think about this. Just an innocent life that was taken away. And, we've had stories in the past where a black police officer went to jail for shooting someone's dog, okay? I'm not comparing the two, but you see that, right? Now let's turn to this situation. This lady was under the influence, they're saying possibly of 4 different types of drugs on top of that, and yet she's not doing that time behind bars, and they're trying to turn it around and blame it. And all those little rules and regulations they're talking about with a bike, they're not even laws in Georgia. So she, you know, that doesn't even matter there, but yet they have to still fight for their daughter's life, and she's not even here.
You know, Romeo, I can't even pronounce the name of these drugs. I've never even heard of these drugs before. So it's 5 drugs, 4 drugs plus methamphetamine. That's the only one that I can actually pronounce when I read them. So I don't know what this lady was on with alcohol and mixing that amount of drugs, and not to mention you had your children with you. So also that alone, you need to be behind the jail just from that alone. But then we go to this situation here, and it happens. And so, Mimi, I'm with you that whether she had a reflector or not have a reflector, anyone's going to argue that they're in the right in this situation. Anyone's going to say, I didn't see any person, right? But with this amount of drugs in your system, how do you even know what you saw? How do you know if you saw a reflector? How do you know if you didn't see a reflector? Yeah. You shouldn't even been on the road with that much in your system. So for that, we shouldn't even be arguing about if the young woman had a reflector, or you literally murdered someone and tried to defend yourself about it. So
you're right, Demi. And the bigger issue now is because they didn't do anything at the time, at the scene of the crime. They don't have anything to go off. They can't do any measurements. They never determined a brake speed, how fast the lady was going. Like, there was nothing done at the scene of the crime. So now they're saying they will perhaps file misdemeanor charges. This should be murder. This should be a felony charge. This should be something other than a misdemeanor charge. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll definitely keep our soulmates posted on this story. Got a little heated there because some of these stories really, really, really touch our hearts. So a San Francisco man is exonerated for a murder he didn't commit after spending 32 years in prison. Joaquin Syria was freed with the help of the Bay Area's Local Innocence Project. Back in 1990, he was convicted for killing a friend, but an eyewitness who was in prison for another crime told prosecutors a mutual acquaintance actually killed that man. But the eyewitness made the confession after he was released from jail. So now he's apologizing to the victim's family for not coming forward sooner and allowing an innocent man to sit in jail for decades. According to the records, the court found Syria guilty based on false witness testimony as well as police misconduct. Now, the city's district attorney's office, it worked with the Innocence Project for about 18 months to prove that Syria was not the killer. The DA's office used resources from its Innocence Commission to prove that this man was not guilty of the crime.
Syracuse police released body cam footage they say shows a more rounded story of what happened when cops detained an 8-year-old black boy for allegedly stealing a bag of potato chips. This is the video. It shows officers manhandling the child shortly after they were called to the Dollar General store. Police say it shows an alternate view from the viral video shot by a bystander that has now made national news.
Hey, you're like a baby to me. Why you?
That's what I'm doing.
I don't know what you're doing. I just see you snatch him up off the. So what's going on then?
You're stealing stuff. If he breaks into your house to steal something.
Nah, man. What, you selling a bag of chips? So y'all treat me like a whole cold-blooded killer?
Keep walking, dude. You don't even know what you're
keep walking. I know what I just came up and see.
Unbelievable. Cops say they never arrested the child and took him home to his parents. The city's first deputy chief, Joe Cecil, admits some of the body cam footage is hard to watch. The bystander video has been viewed more than 5 million times. First of all, as a parent, if I see this, I might end up getting locked up. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I mean, it's very disturbing. But this has happened when I was growing up. And you know what, when the police officers showed up, a friend of mine was trying to do that, walked them back into the store, because most of the time the kid probably lived in that neighborhood, right? So he knows the owner of the store. They had a conversation. You know what ended up getting worked out? Why don't you come and do a little chores? I'll give you some chips or whatever you need, right? We can make this a teaching moment. But instead, this cop wants to treat an 8-year-old like that. So if you're doing that for stealing a bag of chips, what are you going to do if you pull over someone, an adult? Right? And they don't pull over right away. What is your reaction going to be then? Those are the things that cause problem and have us concerned about making sure the right people are in our community policing us.
You know, it's just really hard to constantly see, you know, black boys criminalized at such a young age. I mean, who has, I remember growing up, I think I may have stolen some nail glue, you know, as a teenager. You know, we've all done things that we shouldn't have done. The fact that they want to say, okay, we took this child home and to his parents, the damage is done. You know, them manhandling this little boy, them treating this little boy like that. You know, my son, that's all I can think about. My son is 8 years old. He is 8 years old. I cannot imagine how he would have been feeling, crying. And the bystander there said, listen, I will pay it. Here, I'll pay it. Whatever it was, I'll pay it. Just leave him alone. You know, it's so hard to watch.
It's very hard to watch. You know, I mean, I don't have children, and I'm sure that the both of you really resonate with this video, having young boys in your household. But for me, you mentioned black boys. So there's a new poll that came out that says young black boys face over 50% of all violent cop interactions with cops between 2015 to 2020, and that's in 6 different cities. So young black boys are facing this at a much larger rate that we're seeing in this one instance. What I don't like is that the bystander video came out and it was chopped up right just perfectly to what would make us get a reaction. Like, that's where media comes into play, and then the body camera footage comes out, and now everybody's trying to make it look like it's more than, more is being developed. No, there's no more to it. What we saw happen,
a little boy.
Exactly, you manhandled a little boy. So I don't want people to look and say, oh, well, he's a repeat offender. It doesn't matter, Romeo. Like you said, there are way more ways to handle a bag of potato chips. George Floyd lost his life for something so little. Have we not learned anything?
And you know, Demi, to your point, the fact that the Syracuse the department put this video out, like, well, that video didn't tell the whole story. Here's the real, the real story. It said the same thing. There was nothing different. It said the exact same thing. In fact, it's worse because we get to see him holding him in that position with his hands behind his back longer.
Yeah.
You know
and
what
very
I mean?
hostile with the people.
It was very hostile.
Yeah,
it was worse. It wasn't better.
All right, so much. We'll keep you posted on the story for sure.